Hey everyone, it's me Joji, and today we're going to be doing a deck upgrade on the Rayquaza and Noivern battle decks. Now these are a level 1, so they're not going to be that great out of the box. But let's see if we can make them a bit better with some upgrades. As most times, I will be putting up a running total on the upgrades, especially for these ones because these are for beginners. So most people buying these are going to be people new to Pokemon TCG, and you don't want to run a big amount of money if you're just starting out or dipping your toes. So let's see how well we can upgrade these and keep the cost fairly decent. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. So here it is. This is both of them right here, Rayquaza and Noivern, both regular Vs. And let's take a look at the back, and I believe there's only one copy of each of these Pokemon in these decks. Not the best amount. Usually, especially for these V Pokemon, you want to have at least 2 or even 3, 4 in some cases, but these beginner ones only come with 1 each. And going down these lists, you can go ahead and take a look yourself. Not the best list, to be honest. They really skimped out on some of these beginner decks. And to be honest, it would have been better to get doubles of some, because I know the original theme decks, the starring Pokemon had a regular non-holo version of it in it. It would have been great to maybe have another Rayquaza V or another Noivern V in these decks. So let's go ahead and open this up and see what these cards look like. So starting off with the Rayquaza V side, we do of course get Rayquaza V, which is not actually the same one from Evolving Skies. This is a promo version of Rayquaza V. We also of course get the code card for this deck for you guys to try out online. We get a deck box that contains the other 59 cards that we're going to need for this deck. It also comes with a rule book. It says Quick Start Guide for rules, but this is the rule book on how to play Pokemon TCG. We also get some card versions of it quicker, I would say, than the Quick Start rules. So you can learn off to the side, if you forget how to play. We also get some damage counters to use while playing. And finally, the actual playmat. And I believe these playmats will be the same, depending on whichever one you get. This is actually the back side of the play mat, but this is what you get for the Rayquaza one. You get one featuring Rayquaza that you would set out, and you have positions on where to put your cards. I did forget to mention that it also comes with a jumbo coin of Rayquaza, if you guys are into that, which I am. I do love jumbo coins. So for this deck box, we only get 1 copy of Rayquaza V. Not the best amount, really. Would have loved to have at least 2 of them in this deck, but you only got 1. We also get 2 copies of Thundurus. Now, I'm not really a big fan of the Thundurus, Landorus, and Tornadus trio. Not my favorite legendaries, but it's here, and its Assaulting Spark does help accelerate energy attachment if you really need it. It does 30 damage, which is decent, but the energy attachment's really what you're going to want to be using it for. We get a 3-2 line of Chinchou and Lantern, and honestly, the only good attack on Lantern, although Electro Ball does do 120 damage, Blinding Beam does have the ability there that makes it so your opponent has to flip a coin on their next attack. Moving on, we actually have a 2-1 line of Electrike Manectric. Now, Manectric can be used for draw support here with high speed. Once you evolve into it, it does then let you draw 3 cards. We are done with our electric type Pokemon. We are now moving into our fire type with a 3-2 line of Larvesta Volcarona. Now, Volcarona is probably going to be the better of the fire types we'll see with Combustion and Fire Spin. Fire Spin does 170 damage, but the caveat, as always with most of these high damaging attacks, you have to discard 2 energy from the Pokemon. And I did say it was the better of the two because we have a 3-2 line of Pansear, Simisear. Not my favorite trio type Pokemon, I would say. Probably my least favorite out of all the ones they've done in the past. Doesn't have really good moveset here. Flare for 30, Giga Impact for 110. Not really great. And those are all our Pokemon that we start off with. Alright, now moving on to our trainer cards. We have our first couple of supporters. We have a 4 copy of Hop, which very reminiscent of what they used to do in the theme decks where they would just put How everywhere. Literally draw 3 cards. Nothing special about Hop or How back then. It is just to draw straight 3 cards. We move on to 2 copies of Dan if you want to, play your opponent in rock, paper, scissors. Dan is the man for that. A lot of people loved playing Dan for that reason alone, for the rock, paper, scissors aspect. But moving on, we do have 2 copies of Gym Trainer for some more draw support right there. And then we have a single copy of Sonia. I suppose this is kind of good for searching out Pokemon and energy that you may need, since there are a lot of Pokemon here. To be honest, I would say a little too many. We'll go over that later. And then our last card here is Gordy, which is going to be a huge amount of our energy acceleration here. Look at the first 7 on top of your deck. If any of them are energy, you can put them into your hand. So you can have those cards ready to attach. And already you don't have to worry about searching for them. Okay, moving on to the items in this trainer side of the video. We get 4 copies of Great Ball, not the best Pokeball of choice right now, and probably not would have been in this one, but we do get some Great Balls here. We also get 2 copies of Escape Rope to use in case we need to switch out a Pokemon and, make the opponent switch as well. We get, unfortunately, in my opinion, only 2 copies of Evo Incense. We'll talk about why we need more of them in a bit. We also get 2 copies of Energy Search to increase our energy acceleration so we can draw more quickly what we need. We get 2 copies of Potion to heal any damage we may need to heal, but I feel like 30 is probably not enough. And then we have our single copy of Energy Retrieval to get any cards we are discarding from the effects of some of these attacks. And of course, finally, we have an 8-8 line of Lightning and Fire energy to round out this deck. So looking at this, there is a lot we can improve on from this deck as is, and we'll go over it in just a second. Since we did get the double pack of these decks, we do get another little kit here to improve and upgrade. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, yes, you're going to be using these cards. These are very useful cards they have packed into here. Let's take a look at this code card in a bit. For these cards here, but we get a Professor's Research ×2. We get, I believe, 2 Quick Balls, yes. And I believe 2 copies of Gordy, yeah. And then 2 Energy Search as well. So as I said, this code card right here gives you these cards right here to use in your decks to upgrade online. Okay, moving on to the Noivern deck. We do, of course, get a Noivern V to use. Again, unfortunately, only 1 copy of it. We also get a code card for the deck to use. We, of course, get a deck box with the other 59 cards in it. We'll look at those in a second. Some quick rules here. It's pretty much the shortened version of this whole booklet in a card form to keep on the side if you need to remember how to play the game while you're learning. Here are some damage counters that you can use as well for playing. And finally, we get a mat here so you can figure out where to put your cards. This one features Noivern. The previous one, as I said, just feature Rayquaza. And again, we do have the dual artwork here in the back. Honestly, a nice looking artwork. Again, I forgot to mention, this also comes with a jumbo coin of Noivern. So, taking a look at the Noivern V deck, we do get one copy of Noivern V, unfortunately. We're going to have to deal with that later, but we also get a very interesting line that I hadn't really noticed. Just while opening stuff, you know, I never looked at Zubats, Golbat, and Crobat. We get a 3-3-2 line of it. So we got the 3 Zubats here, followed by 3 Golbats. Now Golbat and Crobat have discrete draw. This lets you draw 2 cards in the case of Golbat when it's evolved into it. Good draw support. And then the Crobat, we get instead 3 cards. Not bad, honestly, really good in my opinion. I didn't realize this was even a thing, discrete draw. Really good card to keep in mind, and honestly might be something to keep in this deck while we're upgrading it. We also get a 3-2 line of Milcery and Alcremie here. Alcremie we'll talk about in a bit. Pretty useful, but could be replaced with something a bit better for energy acceleration. Moving on, we have a 3-2 line of Natu Xatu. Not one of the best cards in here, but it does exist, I should say. And rounding out the Pokemon in this deck, we get 2 copies of Lugia. Moving on to the trainers, we get 4 copies, once again, of Hop. Not my favorite draw supporter, but, you know, it's there. We may switch it out if necessary or if possible. But, you know, a better one, in my opinion, and was used a lot more in Sun and Moon, is Copycat. We actually get 4 copies of it. This is very surprising. This is a really good draw support now. Especially if you're playing with people that draw a lot. This is a good way to also draw a lot. We get 1 copy of Dan for that rock, paper, scissors game. Copy of Sonia to draw some Pokemon and energy. And 1 copy of Gordy for that energy acceleration into your hand. And now moving on to the items in this deck, we get 4 copies of Great Ball to draw our Pokemon, 2 Energy Search to accelerate our energy, 2 Evo Incense, unfortunately, especially seeing how many times we have to evolve, would love to have more of these, 2 copies of Escape Rope to switch in and out, and then finally 2 copies of Potion. And then finishing off with our energy, we actually get 10 copies of Dark Energy and 8 copies of Psychic Energy. Okay, here is the deck as is. Now let's see how we could upgrade it. Now before we get into the actual upgrades, I do want to remind you this is supposed to be a budget upgrade. You're not going to be seeing top of the line cards, you're going to see high rarities. You're going to see what you could do to get this at least a bit more competitive than its base form without breaking the bank. So starting off, we definitely need some Rayquaza VMAX. This is a necessary card for this deck. You want to have at least 2 of these guys. Unfortunately, I only have 1 in a physical form, and an extra Rayquaza V to go with it. So this is the first and most important, in my opinion, upgrade to this deck. You want to have a Rayquaza VMAX. 2, obviously. Now, going on to the next upgrade, we got rid of a lot of Pokemon for this. It is going to be our Energy Engine here. This is going to be a 4-4 line of Flaffy Mareep. This ability here, Dynamotor, is going to be what attaches energy. And keep in mind, you can already see we're going to be focusing more on the lightning energy instead of the fire energies when attaching. Now, we did keep the Thunderous cards in here because I believe the Assisting Spark is a decent attachment attack. So I figured, why not keep it in there in case you don't have your Flaffy set up just yet. But we do want to add something for draw support here. And I thought, why not add 2 Crobat Vs? These things are amazing. You can throw them into almost any deck and it'll get a lot better. So at least 2 is great. 3 is kind of pushing it, so this is why I stick to 2. Now that's it for our Pokemon. So let's add in some trainer cards. First off, let's get a 4 set here of Professor's Research. And since they're so cheap, I would suggest even going for the Professor Oak version of the Professor's Research. Why not play the original Professor in a 4 set? You could even go, I think the full art versions of Professor Oak are actually pretty cheap too, comparatively to the newer ones. Moving on to the next cards, we want to run a 4/4 line of Marnie because it's a really good hand disruptor. You get some cards and your opponent gets to lose the cards they had in hand, put them at the bottom. Really great way to mess up anything they may have tried to set up for the next turn. And speaking of disruption, Boss's Orders. Switching out your opponent's Pokemon for something that you would prefer to do is always a plus. And something that you would always want to do is get some cards from your discard pile after using the Rayquaza VMAX's attack. So this is why Rose, honestly, is a great use here. You get to attach 2 energy cards onto your Pokemon VMAX. And if you're playing this as your last card, you don't have to worry about that stipulation of having to discard your hand. So really great combination right here. Okay, so that is it for the trainers. Only 4 different trainers, but we have tons of item cards to help us out. Starting off with 4 copies of Level Ball. This is going to help you draw out your Flaffy and your Mareep. Definitely needed for this energy engine. And something else to go with that energy engine is, of course, Evo Incense, because you're going to want to draw the Flaffies off of this, or I believe you could even do it for the Rayquaza VMAX if you really needed to. And let's say you don't have those Flaffy out yet, you should probably have some energy search to help you grab those fire and lightning energies you do need. And since we do play a couple basic Pokemon, you want to have at least 2 copies of Quick Ball to get those Rayquaza Vs, or if you need to, the Crobats, and lastly, I would say, use them for the Thundurus. If you need a little bit more time, you can disrupt them with some Escape Ropes, switch one of your Pokemon out, and they also have to do the same. Saves you hopefully a turn, or if you just need to use instead of a switch card. But of course, you do have switch cards that you can use instead of having to use that Escape Rope. Now for energy, I believe we started off with an 8-8 split of fire energy. We're going to take that down to a 4 fire and then 8 lightning, because again, your energy engine here is lightning based, so you want to have a lot more lightning. And of course, Rayquaza only needs 1 fire energy to attack. Having 4 is a great way to avoid having 1 prized, but you do want to have 8 energy for the lightning for the attacks. So in the cases where you do attack with Rayquaza VMAX, you want to discard the lightning energy, not the fire energy. But that is what we would do for this upgrade. Hopefully, it's not too pricey for you guys to try out, but I try to keep it as low as possible, get some cards that are lower rarity. Some Crobats actually go for cheap, and again, these Professor Research are a little bit more expensive by a few cents, but I would get them just because I really like the Professor Oak version over others, and I do believe there's also an older version of Boss's Orders in a non-holo you can get. Now, Noivern isn't the most competitive card currently in the meta, and I would not recommend you buy the single version of just the Noivern V deck, but if you really have to play with the Noivern V deck, this is what we would do. Instead of having just 1, we need another 3 copies of Noivern. Now, this is the same exact Noivern, just different artwork really, but you need 4. You definitely need 4 for this deck. So that's my first suggestion. Now going forward, there is a special Psychic type Zacian V here from the 25th anniversary collection that I would suggest getting, more so for the Roar of the Sword. That ability is going to help you accelerate your energy that you need for the Noivern's attack. So it's good if you can get this guy on your first turn just to use its ability. Crobats are always a good addition, no matter what deck it is. If you need some cards into your hand, Crobat V is probably the best way to do it. But the Crobats line here that was, I think, a 3-3-2 was actually very intriguing to me. It is a good draw support with these abilities here. Discreet draw, honestly, you get to draw 3 times here and then 2 times here. Really good ability. I would suggest using this as well. That way you don't have to use too much for the Noivern deck if you're on a budget. So good way to keep some of the cards you already get from this deck. Now this deck, you always want to have the same amount of cards your opponent has, so Synchro Loud can do the most damage possible, which is why you should run a 4-4 line of Marnie. That way you can have 5 cards and you can set them to 4, use 1 card after Marnie, and you're going to be doing max damage with Synchro Loud. And to make sure that you can always hit what you want, because you can also do damage with its first ability to the bench, you can always pull something off of there using Boss's Orders. We want to run 3 in this deck because you want to be able to hit the weakest Pokemon as much as always possible. And because we want to have the same amount of cards as our opponent's hand, a great way to do that is Copycat, because this literally copies your opponent's hand amount. Great way to always hit max damage with Synchro Loud. Now, because we play a lot of basic Pokemon for our main attackers, we want to run a 4-4 line of Quick Ball. And this will actually help us when we have to discard cards. Maybe we discard something, and instead of pulling something, we use it only to get to a lower amount that our opponent has in their hand, so we can match up. But to get our draw engine here, we do want to get some level balls into the deck, as well as some Evo Incense. That way we can evolve into the Golbat and Crobat a lot faster. And to get our energy, we are actually going to only use these Energy Search. Keep in mind, it only needs 1 and 2 for each of its attacks. So only 4 is enough. That way you can get started. Again, Zacian is going to help you with that Psychic Energy, and then you can use these for the Dark Energy as needed. And then, moving on, we got our trusty switch, which honestly is just there in case you need to switch out a Noivern that may get knocked out. And to help out Noivern's Boom Burst ability, which as a reminder does 20 to each Pokemon on the opponent's bench, we do want to do some extra damage that way. For 1 energy, we can also add Telescopic Sights here, which add on an extra 30 more damage when attacking Pokemon V and GX on the bench. Great way to hit some damage to a lot of Pokemon on the bench, switch them in with Boss's Orders, and then knock them out with Synchro Loud from Noivern V. This is probably the more budget-friendly one because there's not a lot of cards that cost a lot compared to the Rayquaza VMAX, but honestly, it's still not as competitive as I would love it to be. So that's what I would do for these deck upgrades. Honestly, they were a bit difficult, and definitely for the Noivern V. This one is really hard to upgrade, but the Rayquaza V is a little bit easier because it has a VMAX to go with it. Noivern, not so much. The gimmick, obviously, you always want to have the same amount of cards in your opponent's hand, or yours as your opponent's hand. But yeah, it was very interesting to try and make something out of Noivern V, and honestly, that's what makes a good Pokemon TCG player, being able to play with the cards you have. So if you want to test yourself, I'd suggest get the Noivern V and take some of these upgrades and maybe add some of your own. But if you want to be a bit more comfortable, get the Rayquaza V, get some VMAXs, and you'll be able to do pretty well in the meta. Anyways guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was very helpful for upgrading your Rayquaza V and your Noivern V pre-made decks. And if it was, get subscribed, leave a like, because we have more decks coming out in the future, and I will definitely be making more videos on those when they do come out. And as always guys, stay safe, and thanks for watching.